This is George Bush, who is a member of Skull and Bones. Actually, another writer on the Masonic Order, in this case a member of the Masons, has traced the history of the Masons back even earlier than John Robinson did. This is the frontispiece of a book entitled Freemasonry and the Ancient Gods. All I have is a copy of the book, since it was printed in 1921 and is now out of print. The author, Mr. J.S.M. Ward, is a master Mason, and this is what he writes. The theory I venture to propound is that Freemasonry originated in the primitive initiatory rites of prehistoric man, and from those rites have been built up in all of the ancient mysteries. Modern Masonry has become the repository of the hidden wisdom of the ancients. So he is proposing that Freemasonry can trace its history all the way back to the very earliest history of mankind. Next, I'd like to discuss the significance of the number 13 to the Masons. This is a page from a Masonic magazine entitled The New Age, in which the Masons discuss the mystical number 13. The article says that in the number used repeatedly in both sides of the Great Seal of the United States was not a coincidence. They talked about the fact that there were 13 leaves in the olive branches, 13 bars and stripes on the shield, 13 arrows in the eagle's claw, 13 stars in the green crest above the seal, and 13 layers of stone in the pyramid shown on both sides of the Great Seal. Notice that the Masons are claiming that the number is one of their numbers. Those who do not see the significance of the Masonic number 13 claim that it stands for the 13 states in the Union at the time of the Declaration of Independence. But the Masons appear to be claiming that the Founding Fathers waited until there were precisely 13 states to form the Union. They did not create the United States when there were 12 or 14 states. They created the Union when there were precisely 13 states as a way of concealing their involvement. Let me show you just how significant the number 13 is to the planners on the eagle side of the Great Seal. It appears as if the Masons, as we've already covered, selected the eagle because, and here's another reason why they selected the bird, the words American eagle have 13 letters in them. The words E pluribus unum have 13 letters in them. On the pyramid side of the Great Seal, the words Annuit Septus, the Latin words on the top of the circle, have 13 letters. There are a total of 39 letters on the reverse side of the seal. 39 when divided by 3 equals 13. There are a lot of other concealed uses of the number 13 around the time of the founding of this nation. This is a popular flag of the American Revolution. It says, an appeal to God. Those words have 13 letters. The words, don't tread on me, have 13 letters. And notice the snake wrapped around the tree. This is once again a symbol of the sun god, the serpent talked about and discussed in the first book of the Bible. And lastly, the tree appears to be an evergreen tree, one that would not lose its leaves during the winter when the sun worshippers fear that their god is dying. And this might be of some importance. The Star-Spangled Banner, this nation's national anthem, was based upon a song called Anacreon in Heaven, written by a Mason. And Albert Pike added another clue that the American flag is itself of Masonic origin. He wrote this in his book entitled Agenda. The triangles of the visible and invisible world are always interlaced. Of the 3 interlaced triangles of the highest masonry, one is white, one blue, and one red. So the American flag used the colors of the Masonic Lodge. Also, Betsy Ross, the woman who sewed the first American flag together, was married to John Ross, a member of the Masonic Lodge. The actual date that the Founding Fathers chose to declare their independence from the British government also has Masonic significance. The words July the 4th have 13 letters. I'll show you other concealed symbolism on the date July the 4th in a few moments. The year 1776 has a concealed 13 in it as well. If you add the last 2 numbers of the year 1776, meaning if you add the 7 to the 6, you will get, obviously, the number 13. This was no accident, as I will show. If you multiply the number 13 by itself, you get 169. If you add the traditional founding of this nation as 1607, when the Pilgrims came to America, and add 169, meaning the concealed multiplication of 13 by itself, you get 1776, the year that America founded this nation. If you add the concealed 169 to 1776, the founding day of this nation, you will get the year 1945, the year that Harry Truman, the 33rd degree Mason, dropped the atomic bombs on the Christians in Japan. Our founding fathers declared their independence in 1776, but did not create their first government until 1789. They waited precisely 13 years to form America's federal government. George Washington had 12 other generals plus himself for a total of 13. A total of 13 people worked on the Great Seal of the United States. The United States Navy had a committee of 13 controlling all naval affairs. It had 13 ships in the First Fleet. Now this is the flag, as you will recognize, of the Confederate States used during the Civil War. Notice that there are 13 stars on it. If the number 13 was used, as it was in the American flag, to signify one star for each state, there would only be 11 stars on this flag, since there were only 11 states in the Confederation. The argument cannot be made that the Confederacy was waiting for 2 more states to join the Confederation, because this flag was adopted in 1863, about in the middle of the war. 11 states started the war in the Southern Confederation, and 11 states finished it. And this is a more modern use of the number 13. This is a recent photograph of President Bill Clinton in the White House. Notice the bookcase in the back wall behind him. There are 13 scallops inside the semicircle. I'd like to show you 2 more current examples of the number 13 in the business world. This is the symbol of American Tel-and-Tel, telephone and telegraph, obviously. The circle has 13 lines in it, plus the circle is and has been a symbol of the sun. And this is the symbol of Time Life Incorporated. It has 6 triangles pointing one way and 7 pointing the other. 6 plus 7 equals 13, so they, like AT&T, are concealing the use of the number 13 in their logo. As I've been trying to show you, the number 13 is concealed everywhere. And to make my point that sometimes state flags conceal Masonic symbolism in them, I'd like to show you the beautiful flag of the state of Arizona, my home state. This flag utilizes the single star as its centerpiece, and as we just read, it is a Masonic symbol of the sun and the sun god. If you count the number of rays coming from the single star in the middle, you will count 13 of them. This is unfortunately a rather dark slide showing a Masonic magazine showing a picture with similar rays coming from the top of the pyramid. If you count those rays, there are precisely 13 of them. Notice, going back to the flag, that the star is copper colored. Those who live in Arizona would surely say that the star on the state flag is copper colored because of the huge amounts of the copper mined in the state. But I believe a far more satisfactory explanation is the one offered by Aleister Crowley, a Satanist. This is the first of 2 pictures of this man I would like to show you. Notice that he is using a strong light in front of him to make a shadow on the wall behind him. The shadow, made by his fingers, looks like a horned devil. Since Mr. Crowley was a Satanist, one can fairly presume that this shadow is what Mr. Crowley felt the devil looked like. Crowley wrote this about his worship of the sun god Lucifer in his book entitled Liber Semek, I guess. I don't know how to pronounce that, but that's the best I can do. O breathing, flowing sun, I invoke thee, the terrible and invisible God, who dwellest in the void places of the spirit. Notice that Mr. Crowley, like Albert Pike, believed that Lucifer was a god. This is the second picture of Mr. Crowley. Look at the strange way that he is holding his arms. This is a rather strange way to have your picture taken. I do not know this, but it appears as if he is holding his arms in this manner, so that his 2 arms represent the 2 obelisks outside the sun temples of Egypt. If that is true, he is inviting the sun god, Lucifer, into his temple, the body. It is commonly known that Aleister Crowley was a Luciferian, so this explanation makes sense. He can invite the sun god to come between the two columns, just like the two obelisks outside invite the sun god into the temple. And to show you that this is not at all unusual, this is a slide showing a picture of Gloria Steinem, one of today's well-known advocates of the women's liberation movement. This picture was on a cover of Parade magazine. Notice that she is too holding up her two arms just like Aleister Crowley. Notice that she has also turned her hands so that we can see the rings on her fingers. And this is a close-up of her hands. Notice also that on each hand she has snakes coiled around the same finger. This is what is Gloria Steinem telling us? I cannot say for certain, but it looks like she is trying to tell us something, just like Aleister Crowley tried to tell us in his photograph with his arms in a similar manner. But going back to Arizona, or to the Arizona flag, Mr. Crowley told the world that the copper color was used because it resembled the copper-colored sun when it sets each night. So it appears that the flag of Arizona conceals secret meanings known only to Luciferians and Masons. And the reason I believe it is so is because the state of Arizona, the state in which I live, was directly created by high-ranking Masons. This is an item that appeared in our local newspaper that states that our first Masonic Lodge meeting in Arizona was held in the governor's mansion. But the Masons not only meet in government buildings to conduct their business, the government also meets in Masonic lodges to conduct theirs. This is an article in the spring 1964 Royal Arch Mason magazine that says that Missouri's first Confederate capital in the Civil War was at the Masonic Hall at Neosho, Missouri. The article goes on to say this about Missouri. The Confederate legislature met there on October the 21st through October the 29th, 1861, to pass an act of secession from the Union. This is an article that exposed the fact that the Arizona state flag, talked about in this article, was sewn together by Nan Hayden. Nan Hayden was the wife of former United States Senator Carl Hayden, shown here in this picture receiving a pen from President Lyndon Johnson. That's Carl Hayden, bent over somewhat with the bald head and the glasses. Carl Hayden was a 33rd degree Mason. Other prominent Arizonans in politics are Senator Barry Goldwater and House Minority Leader in the House, former Minority Leader in the House, John Rhodes, who were both 33rd degree Masons. This is an article in the Royal Arch Mason magazine that confirms that both of these political leaders from Arizona were 33rd degree Masons. And here's the bottom of that article. It says that Senator Barry Goldwater and Congressman John J. Rhodes are 33rd degree Scottish Rite Masons. So if you want to go further in government and happen to come from Arizona, it helps to be a 33rd degree Mason. And to further explain how Arizona is a Masonic state, let me remind you that Phoenix is the state capital of my home state. I'm sorry, this slide's upside down. This is a map showing the city in approximately the center. The city of Arizona, of Phoenix rather, is named after the phoenix bird shown here on the cover of a pamphlet published by the Scottish Rite Freemasons. Albert Pike told us about the phoenix in his book entitled Agenda. Connected with light, the sun, and Kirum, I believe that Kirum is another way of saying Harmabith, the builder of Solomon's temple, is that allegorical bird, the phoenix. Like all other symbols, it was invented to conceal, and its meaning, like that of other symbols, is of course not obvious. In Arabia, the phoenix is sacred to the sun. Notice he capitalized the word S, the letter S in the word sun, and you do that when you talk about the sun being a god. Fred Giddings, in his book entitled Secret Teachings in the Occult Art, wrote this. He said, the phoenix bird will live for a period of 500 years, at the end of which it builds a split nest of precious spices. The nest completed, the phoenix sings a doleful song. I'm sorry, the next slide here. The nest completed, the phoenix sings a doleful song and then flaps its wings to set the nest on fire. The bird is then burned to ashes, and from the mass of carbon there miraculously springs to light a new phoenix. We may see in it certain, meaning the myth, in this the